He was born in the Bronx, son of a New York police lieutenant and the grandson of a New York City firefighter and taxi driver. Joe, welcome back to Abney. We're eager to hear your vision on education reform in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Lhota.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you for that kind introduction, and good morning to everyone. As advertised this morning, I'm going to talk about the state of our schools and my vision for education reform in New York City. This is going to be the first of many public policy speeches that I will be making throughout this campaign, and I want to thank Abney for the opportunity to present my vision for the future of our city school system. For nearly 2 decades and 5 mayoral administrations, both Democratic and Republican, the city has recognized that our education system is dysfunctional. We decentralized the power at the Board of Education. That didn't work. Then we centralized the power at the Board of Education. That didn't work. Finally, we got to the root cause and problem and acknowledged that it was the Board of Education and how it was structured that was the problem. It was unaccountable. In 2002, after many years of pressing the state legislature, the executive in City Hall was given the authority over our education system. The mayor would finally be held responsible and be held accountable. And Mayor Bloomberg assumed that responsibility and told New Yorkers that he should be judged on his governance of the Department of Education. So let's take a look at what's actually happened over the last 11 years since we've had mayoral control. In 2002, 37% of our students in grades 3 to 8 were meeting standards in math, 37%. Today, it's 60%. In 2002, only 40% of the students passed the Regents exam. Now 70% passed the Regents exam. Students who were in passing English proficiency increased from 61% in 2002 to this year, 90%. The percentage of students graduating from high school since 2002 has increased over 10 percentage points, while the number of children and students dropping out of high school within 4 years has been cut in half. If anyone told us that when we had the opportunity to get mayoral control, that these would be the results that we would see in 1 decade, we would have been joyful and thankful and praised the fact that we have mayoral control. I believe these results are incredible. Now, a little bit of history. As you all know, I had the privilege of serving Mayor Giuliani during his administration during historic reductions in crime. Elected officials, city, state, federal, were all falling over themselves to take credit for the reduction in crime. And many had the right to take the credit. Mayor Dinkins, Speaker Peter Vallone, when shepherding the Safe Streets, Safe Cities bill, they surely should have gotten credit as well. The state legislature for enacting the law, the Clinton administration for pushing the crime bill that gave us the officers on the street. They were all important in the crime reduction. Everybody used the phrases quality of life. It was adopted by virtually every elected official, not only in this city, but throughout the country. So when I look at the success of Mayor Bloomberg and his administration with education reform in our city, I ask, where are these elected officials now? What are they saying? Where is the support for all of the advances that have been made? Why aren't they rallying around Mayor Bloomberg? Well, the answer is quite simple, for me at least. They're all afraid. Unlike the critical support prior mayor received from certain police unions, Mike has no such support, as we all know, from the teachers union. If you support reform, somehow or another you're deemed to be anti-teacher. Well, I'm standing here today and I'm affirmatively stating that nothing could be further from the truth. When CompStat was initiated and every measurable statistic of crime and police activity was measured, no one ever claimed that the mayor was anti-cop. So why can't we measure and track test scores like we do all other major statistics? We have to figure out what's going on. The governor then comes along and then mandates that teachers should be subject to an evaluation system, and the union objects. It refused to sign an evaluation system with the Department of Education, which resulted in the city losing $250 million in state aid. Historically, and I remember this clearly, elected officials have held up the adoption of the state budget or the city budget for just a mere amount of an increase in education funding. So what happens when you lose $250 million? Where are these same elected officials? Where are they standing? Are they standing with the mayor? Absolutely not. On the very day that the city lost state aid, $750 million, 3 candidates for mayor, 3 individuals who want your support to be our city's next chief executive, manage our education system, and assume responsibility for over 1.1 million students. They ran to a press conference, not to stand with the mayor, not to stand with the children or the parents, but to stand with the UFT and its leadership. So more background. Many of you have asked me over time, why exactly did I leave the MTA? You have no idea how much I enjoyed running that system. But it was examples like this, seeing dedicated public servants abandoning children, abandoning their fiduciary responsibility to our city, and racing to union headquarters. This has only reinforced my candidacy and my decision to run for mayor. When I see things like this, I conclude the following: that the city's great successes over the last 20 years are quite fragile, and the improvements on our education system that we've achieved over the last 11 years are even more fragile. So now that I've given you a little bit of past and history and why I'm concerned, let me discuss my vision for the future of the schools. But first, there are 2 things you need to know about me. First, my father instilled in me a belief that a problem always presents an opportunity, a chance for change, a prospect to do better, an opening for reform. No matter what the problem is or what the crisis might be, I instinctively believe that my cup is always half filled. It's never half empty. It's an optimism that I carry with me in everything that I do. The second thing I believe in is something called the Athenian Oath. 2,500 years ago, the leaders in ancient Athens took an oath. They called it the Athenian Oath. These leaders pledged at the beginning of their term in office that they would turn over their city not only not less, but greater and more beautiful than it was transmitted to them. This should be a goal for all of our public servants. This should be a goal for every single candidate who's running for mayor, to leave our city greater and more beautiful than we received it. And this pledge should apply to the entire city, every agency, every department, every borough, every park, every neighborhood, everything. But how exactly does a mayor leave the Department of Education greater than they receive it? First, the mayor must prioritize. My number 1 priority in education will be our students. Teachers in the union, they're important, but they're not the number 1 priority. That perch belongs to the students. Parents are always a priority, but they are not the number 1 priority. The number 1 priority at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day will always be the students. And while I believe in empowering teachers with the best pedagogical tools, our classroom curriculum is about the students. It's not about the teachers. And I believe strongly and believe very strongly in collective bargaining. But our education system is not about the unions. Again, our education system is about the students. It should, from my point of view, be the end of the story. If students are not learning, if students are not improving, then we're failing in our mission, we're failing in our oath to do better. So how do we do this? First, we have to continually measure and quantify our schools. Second, the mayor must empower and uplift all of our teachers. Third, the mayor must give schools the flexibility to manage and to teach to the needs of their students. And finally, the mayor must work with the unions to ensure that the students come first. A mayor will not be able to transmit New York in a greater shape without first understanding the city that they inherit. And no mayor or any of the citizens will know whether the city's improving without constantly measuring and analyzing the services. We measure everything in this country. We measure everything in this city. It's a centuries-old efficiency and effective leadership that tells us that if you can measure it, you can improve it. And only by assessing the numbers can one determine the quality of our education performance. 20 years ago, we learned this with CompStat. CompStat was the only way City Hall could bring safety and security to a city that had been written off as ungovernable and unmanageable. That's why it's critical for City Hall to bring these same methods of analysis and evaluation to the Department of Education. But let me be clear, I do not want to measure performance and evaluation for the purposes of mudslinging at the UFT. I don't want to measure and evaluate school performance to punish teachers. Just the contrary. I want to measure and evaluate our education system so that we can improve it for the benefit of our number one priority, the students. I want to measure and evaluate our schools so that I can be held accountable. That's why it's paramount that we continue strong mayoral control over the New York City school system. I have always believed in mayoral control. I have always believed in strong mayoral control. I believed it when I lobbied for it when I was deputy mayor. I believe it today as sure as I can. Anyone who suggests that they want to weaken mayoral control, I believe, is wrong and afraid to be held accountable. This is not what you or anyone else needs to have in a leader. The cost of that control is that the mayor must be the one who is held accountable and must answer to the parents and to the citizens of this city should their policies be lacking. I welcome this responsibility. I will never, ever shy away from it. Strong mayoral control, though, does not mean central control. The mayor needs input from teachers, from principals, from parents, because a successful education policy requires school-level guidance. I will make sure that the chancellor that I select holds frequent town hall meetings and listens and seeks advice from parents, from teachers, from principals to gain the knowledge necessary to manage the system. It has been 11 years since the mayor gained control of the New York City public school system. It has changed, and I may be the only one who believes it who's running for office. I believe it has changed for the better. We have a long way to go, though. Based on these results that I mentioned earlier, I believe Mayor Bloomberg should be credited, not debited. He should be applauded for what has happened since he took control of the board. I want to improve these numbers. I want more kids graduating within 4 years. I want fewer kids dropping out. I want more kids passing Regents exams. And this is where our teachers come into play. The key to improving the quality of our education for all of our children begins with our teachers. Teachers need to know that when I'm mayor, City Hall will be their greatest advocate. I believe that teaching is more than just a job, more than just a profession. I believe teaching is a calling. People who want to educate our young children should be held up by society and thanked for wanting to train young minds. Teaching is the catalyst that allows our civilization to advance. So I want to help teachers. I want all teachers to be great teachers. If they're evaluated to not be a great teacher, but they have that calling to educate young minds, I want to give them the tools and the training and the professional development to become great teachers. I'm willing to wager that the vast majority of teachers are in fact excellent, and among those who are not, there is a great potential for excellence. We need to uplift teachers. I believe teachers are our solution. They are not the problem. Teachers need to know, and I'll change my phraseology a little bit, that when I'm mayor, I will be their greatest advocate. I think I will be even stronger than the union will be in being their advocate. Teachers need to trust in mayoral control. If you look at the improvements in education since it moved from downtown Brooklyn and Livingston Street to Tweed, there have been some great advances. Our teachers are, in fact, getting paid more. They do want a contract. I'm sure I'll answer a question about that later. And our teacher corps has a lot more experience. The city is spending billions on professional development, and we need to spend more. Teacher salaries have actually increased 43% over the last 10 years, and the number of teachers with over 5 years of experience has increased from 60% to 75%. Most important, we are also making more money available into the classroom. We are now seeing the average expenditure per student almost doubled over the last 11 years. So I actually believe that our schools aren't being shortchanged. It's all about management. More work needs to be done. I do believe that the new teacher evaluation system that was installed or mandated by State Commissioner King will improve our teachers, and it will help our schools. Instead of the old system where we only had 2 ways to grade our teachers, satisfactory or unsatisfactory, we now have 4 possible evaluations: highly effective, developing, and unsatisfactory. Now, I know teachers fear this evaluation system. You should not. It is not meant to punish teachers. It is intended to improve the quality of teaching in New York City. Remember, my goal is to uplift teachers, not beat them down. This is my commitment. I want to give New York City children the best possible teachers. And again, if you desire to be a great teacher, I will provide you with the training and the professional development to make it happen. I will support further proposals to shift greater funding to teacher training to improve the quality of our teachers. Now, if a teacher is deemed to be highly effective, that teacher should be rewarded. That's right, we should have merit pay. I know that many people reject the concept of rewarding the best teachers. They come armed with studies and complaints. They bellyache that the merit pay system really relies too much on test scores, and they argue that it really didn't work in New York City the last time we tried it. When New York City did have merit pay once before, unfortunately it was distributed equally to all teachers, regardless of how they were evaluated. Teachers are not entirely equal. Some are highly effective, some are not. A bonus system that rewards everybody equally is not an effective merit pay system. To be highly effective, the highly effective teacher should be rewarded with the bonus. An unsatisfactory teacher should be rewarded with additional training. If a teacher improves from unsat to any other category above, they deserve a bonus, because we're calling this improvement and valuation system an important part of our merit pay system. Now, for those of you who dismiss the whole concept of bonuses for teachers in New York City, all I ask you to do is look across the river to Newark. Governor Christie and Mayor Booker both worked together to create a merit pay system that was funded by Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. This system rewards teachers who are rated highly effective. Even Randy Weingarten, former head of the UFT here in New York City, now head of the National Union, was pleased with the outcome of what happened in Newark. Bottom line, if Booker and Christie can get together and create a bonus system that earns the respect of the union chief in New York City, Mulgrew and Lhota can do the same thing. But evaluations and bonuses are not enough to help teachers succeed. While I believe mayoral control is the cornerstone and the beginning of a sound education policy, mayors don't teach, teachers teach. My goal is to ensure that teachers and schools understand the core curriculum and acknowledge that students need a lifetime foundation of knowledge and skills, what I call a common body of knowledge. Testing is a method in which we can assess a student's progress, but a test is not education. A test merely is a measure. I hear too many teachers complaining that they're teaching to a test. I am sympathetic to that complaint. Teachers should be providing the students with core knowledge, a foundation upon which they can build for the rest of their lives a common body of knowledge. In the spirit of flexibility, I want an education system that provides vast choices for our teachers, for our parents, and our children. We live in a competitive world, a world that is flatter with improvements in technology and communication. Our children are competing not just with other Americans, but they're competing globally. Like our partners in Europe and in Asia, their education system, we need to provide our students with the fundamentals at a younger age than we're giving our kids now. We need to prepare them to be much more functional in the 21st century. A child or a student who does not understand the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic will fail when they face domestic and international competition today, and irrespective of their profession, regardless of whether they attend a traditional public school or even a vocational public school. A carpenter who does not understand angles is going to fail. A plumber or a mechanic who can't read trade publications or manuals will fail. Look, as mayor, I will advocate for engaging our children on an educational basis at an earlier age. I will also advocate for longer school days and longer school years. Pre-K programs in particular should not be what they are today, which I believe are glorified babysitting services. Preschool education should have a core curriculum that provides our children, provides our students with the foundational learning skills so that they can move forward and advance in our public schools. So let me advance school closures for 1 second. The only reason why a school closes is because it's not properly educating our children. That school is failing our children. I actually believe that keeping a failing school open is immoral. This does not mean that a failing school building is going to remain closed. A school building should never close. Instead, the school within that building should be immediately reconstituted with a better curriculum, a better principal, more and better teachers, and overall, the building is going to continue to be an educational place. The language we use about closing schools is not fully understood by parents. No building closes. What we do is we reconstitute that school. No building will remain fallow while I'm mayor. No building or space within a school building will ever go unused. Understand this, I will not, under any circumstances, put a moratorium on school closures. I'm also a big believer in charter public schools. Over a decade ago, there were only 14 charter schools in New York City. Today, there are over 150, serving 48,000 students. I believe that they have remarkable results. I've seen them, I've been there. The great ones are better than our regular schools. The ones that haven't worked have been closed, but they all have the potential of improving education of every single student in the city. Parents want and deserve choices for their children. I will provide parents with choice and with more choice. I will call for legislation expanding the number of charter public schools in the city of New York. At a minimum, the number must need to double. Parents want charter public schools. Our waiting list for children wanting to get into the charter schools is endless. Recently, Zogby did a poll and found that 86% of the respondents of New York City parents want more options for their children. And among African American parents in particular, over 90% want the opportunity to send their children to other schools. I think it's disgraceful that children can't attend a school of their parents' choosing. We can, all of us in New York City, do better. We need to make school space available for charter public schools, whether it's through continued co-location or using the space in the various different schools that are being closed down by the Diocese of Brooklyn or the Archdiocese of New York. Parents need choice, children need choice, and teachers need choice. Opposition to charter public schools, I believe, is insulting to the advancement of education in this country. Those opposed to charter schools fail to grasp the intrinsic value of competition, and unfortunately, they don't put children first. My experience tells me that these reforms are necessary. Sitting up here are various different members and trustees of the City University of New York, and I have been a trustee for the last 12 years, and I can tell you, notwithstanding the advancements that we have seen and the improvements we have seen in public school education over the last decade, there is an urgent need for reform. I firmly believe that all students who graduate from New York City public schools should be ready to do college-level work. But last year, 80% of our high school graduates required remedial education in reading, writing, and computing before they were able to matriculate in one of our 7 community colleges. 80%, that's 4 out of every 5 graduates did not know the basics. I asked a question at the board, and I'll ask the question of you today. How did we let them graduate with not being able to do college-level work? We have to stop failing the children. To the U of T, I say this, help me put students first. Help me uplift our teachers and improve our teachers. Believe me when I say, as I said earlier, that teaching is a calling, it's not merely a job, and that I want all of our teachers to be great. I will provide the resources necessary to make the U of T members great. I'm not going to pander to the union. We've just gone through all that. I'm willing to cooperate with the U of T. I'm willing to sit down with them and to negotiate. But let me tell you, I'm not going to give them a back rub in an election year like so many other candidates. I want to challenge the U of T to help me implement a merit pay system. I want to challenge the U of T to continue to support the new evaluation system for all of our teachers. I want to challenge the U of T to help me expand charter schools. Please help me put our children first. So let me conclude by stating the obvious. We must urgently implement further education reform. We need we live in a global environment, and our children live in an ever-increasing competitive world. We must provide our children with the best possible education so that they can compete and be successful, so that our city can compete and be successful. This is how a society advances, and quite honestly, I believe education reform is the human rights issue of the early part of the 21st century. Our education system today is fragile. It needs more work. It's time we solidify it. We owe it to our children to work together for their benefit. Government, parents, teachers, unions, all of us. We need to band together on behalf of students. The students should be our first priority. Maybe they should be our only priority. To conclude, I'll just basically say I take the Athenian Oath very, very seriously. As mayor, I will improve upon the education system I inherit, and every day, every single day, I will work to make it better. Thank you.
Joe, thank you for your insightful remarks. As a founder of a charter school, I appreciate those comments in terms of expanding them and the impact that they've had on the educational system. I'm going to take Chairman's prerogative and ask the first question. They're interrelated. I walked up with my iPad mini. If you read the paper this morning, I believe it's the Los Angeles school system is transferring over in the next year or so to no more books. It's all on this. And is that something we should be focusing on here in New York? And then also, and part of that is helping create the workforce for the future. And should we be starting coding in public schools at a much earlier age so they can learn to be the future entrepreneurs?
Bill, because I was told to keep my speech to 20 minutes, I took the section out about technology. There was a whole section I wanted to talk about the use of technology, the use of tablets in teaching our children. Our children are much more used to working with computers, at least than I was when I was in school. And we're finding data coming out of various different schools that children, students are actually retaining more by using tablets. Yes, we need to partner with the private sector in New York to really enhance and change the technology. One thing we also need to do is we need to change how our classrooms work. You know, having 20 to 30 kids sitting in a classroom facing a teacher, facing a blackboard, as one of my good friends tells me, it's the only thing that hasn't changed in 150 years in the United States, how we go about the structure of teaching our kids. Yes, I have been to some schools in New York City that are using technology. It's extraordinary. It's actually interactive. It's not just a kid playing a game. There's a teacher watching how they add, how they multiply, how they divide, and actually how they think. So yes, we absolutely need to use technology. I think you asked me a question about programming. Coding, which I consider programming. Listen, coding a computer, programming a computer is a foreign language. We should be teaching foreign languages at the earliest possible age, and we should be teaching our students the tools necessary to work in the 21st century. We are going to be with technology for the rest of our lives. It's only going to get more complex and more advanced, and we have to teach our students this new language, the language of computing. It's very simple. I learned, Fortran, God forbid, 35 years ago. I didn't know why I needed it, but it taught me how to add more than anything else. I think it's very important that we incorporate as part of our core curriculum, as part of our common body of knowledge, an understanding of how our computers and how our technology works.
Questions? There are mics around the room. Questions? There's got to be a question for Joe about education.
Hey, Weisenfeld,
No, that's the wrong place to go. I will ask another question. In terms of the union contract, what is your thoughts about that?
The question of the union contract always comes up, and the first question is always about retroactive pay. As all of the independent budget office and the controllers and everyone who looks at the New York City budget will tell you, we can't afford retroactive pay. So what I have told the unions when I go visit them, and they generally all kick me out, but all I tell them is that I will give you a fair contract from this point going forward. But just like in 1995 with the DC 37 labor negotiations, the city of New York couldn't afford anything for the first 2 years. So we determined what the 5-year contract was going to be. We figured out what the present value was about, and we got 0.00344. We weighted it a little bit differently, so the present value was there. If a union member if a union leader and I sit down at a table and we come to a conclusion about what the increases should be going forward, if they want to take any portion of that and make it a lump sum payment up front, I'm all for it. I won't call that retroactive pay. It won't be pensionable. It won't go into the base. It is exactly what I said it is, a lump sum payment. They'll need that to get it past the unions and get the ratification. We've done it before. I've done it in the public sector. I've negotiated with unions in the private sector. There's a way to get this done. We just have to sit down at the table. We've got to fix this problem. All of our unions are without a contract. I'm not going to wait until January 1st or January 2nd to start it. I'm going to start immediately after the election. We need to sit down with the unions quickly and begin this process and get on to the real core issues in the city.
Any other questions?
looking back at the chancellors, do you think that the next chancellor needs to be an educator, or can it be somebody plucked out from the private sector?
I believe the next chancellor should be someone with education in their background. Dennis Walcott actually was a school teacher at one point in his life, but he's been far away from the classroom. I actually do think that we need, an educator and also a good manager, and that's a rare combination. But I do think that it's not just going to be a business person who doesn't have education in their background at all. That's not possible. I won't appoint someone chancellor without an education background.
Back there.
Good morning. One of the things that Bloomberg has really been terrific about is rezoning and really looking at how to maximize development in New York. But as part of that rezoning effort, he hasn't looked at infrastructure capacity. And part of that is the sewer and water system, its ability to handle that growth, but the education system and school capacity as well, and classroom sizes. How would you look at that?
Never thought I'd get a question about water and sewer system and classroom sizes, so thank you. And thinking about it. I mean, it begs the question of our entire infrastructure. We're an old city. We're a very old city, and we've got to spend an awful lot to maintain our infrastructure. I think as we go through zoning and rezoning of the city of New York, we've got to do it in a very comprehensive way. We've got to look at our transportation system and figure out, do we need wider roads so we can have bike lanes? Do we need to enhance our sewer system? And more importantly, are there going to be enough classrooms? I think, if you look downtown across from City Hall next to the hospital, that tall building, which is now Bruce Ratner's rental building, that building in the first 5 stories was required to be a school. It's very important that we commingle both residential, commercial, and our education facilities together. We can't expand and just automatically assume that the people are going to move into neighborhoods like Williamsburg where there aren't enough schools. Let me tell you, young people, they move to the neighborhood, they don't stay single forever. They get married, they have children, they need schools. City planning needs to be comprehensive. We need to look at it on a comprehensive approach. Felice, I hope that answers your question.
Joe, thank you very, very much for your insightful remarks on education and infrastructure, and we look forward to seeing what goes on in the next few months as the campaign moves forward.